Welcome to the Alchemy Consulting Group podcast. Join Arquella Hargrove, Alchemy's Chief Culture Officer, for impactful conversations with business leaders and experts who are committed to transforming their work cultures and creating inclusive work environments. Let's learn, develop, and garner best practices together. Enjoy this episode.
Welcome to Alchemy Consulting Group's podcast, where we distill conversations with thought leaders, bringing you transformative insights and strategies. And our mission is to transform organizational cultures one business at a time. And so we're glad that you're here joining us on this fabulous conversation with one of our thought leaders and friends, Shanta Eaden. My name's Arquella Hargrove, Chief Culture Officer at Alchemy Consulting Group. And I am joined today with my co-host, Deanna. Deanna, if you can introduce yourself again to our listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for having me again. Super excited to be here with you ladies and to talk about a really important subject. So been in the space of executive coaching and leadership development for a number of years in the Houston area, and love the topic that we're going to be talking about today around change. So again, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thank you, Deanna, for being here. And then our fabulous thought leader for today's conversation is the Chief Executive Officer for Leaders Edge, Shanta Eaden. Shanta is a friend and a collaborator. We're excited to have you here with us. If you can share a little bit more about you and your business and what you're doing to create change in the world.
Awesome. Thank you, Arquella, for having me. And thanks, Deanna. Looking forward to the conversation. So again, Shanta, really, Leaders Edge is about activating and equipping leaders to help affect change. So we partner with organizations to help them execute on their major strategies, including diversity, equity, inclusion, but we also do a lot around strategic planning and also other major change initiative operations, technology, implementations. And so I'm really excited. Change is like one of my favorite topics to talk about because change is constant, and really excited to get the conversation started.
Awesome. Thank you again. We're looking forward to the conversation. I just saw pop up in my email where Gallup shared a story around an organization that just aligned their culture with strategy. And so I know we've done this work together. And so one of the things that they were doing, sharing about this particular company, is that they redefined their company's purpose and values. And again, to ensure that it aligned with the culture around strategy. And so I want you to share with our audience around what are some things that leaders should think about when they do embark on changes and to ensure that they are aligned with that overall organization strategy.
Yeah, I think the main thing is to realize that an organization is just a collective of individuals. And so when we think about change, we should be thinking about the change at an enterprise level. And I like to say that we all go together with this change. So from a leaders should really be thinking about how can they really equip their leaders to make sure that they're ready for the change. That could be through training, learning and development, coaching, but also creating, like you say, this sense of purpose around why the change is important, and then create what we call a change story, right? So we can all be talking the same language and articulating the message to our teams about why this change is important and what their role in affecting the change will be.
I love that. Again, just to make sure everyone is speaking the same language, that change story, that is so much needed. And a lot of times, as we know, working with leaders and teams around change, people need to understand the why, but not only the why, but the how to the change in order to get that buy-in initially. And again, to your point, it's a collective process and a collective for everyone to be involved and responsible for sure. And so, Deanna, if you can just, again, as we continue to build up on this topic around change and what leaders need to do to help, again, to navigate the change, to drive the change, what might be some areas that you want to share or ask Shanta around some of the work that she's doing?
Well, first of all, Shanta, I love what you said at the beginning. Like, I love change. And I would say that most important organizations don't love change.
Yes.
So
like change.
Why do we have to do that? So when you think about the organizations that you worked with and kind of some of the things that you see in practice, What are the areas of focus?
I think it depends on what the engagement is, but in the area, let's just talk about diversity, equity, inclusion first, if that's okay. I mean, we think about that. We really partner with our organizations to build a strategy around what that means for the organization as a whole, and how does that align to the business strategy. So we really like to focus on outcomes. I call it focus on the outcome. So we focus on the outcomes that we're hoping to achieve, the leadership expectations, behaviors, attitudes that we hope to achieve, as well as what processes do we need to standardize and or evaluate in order to be able to really achieve the outcomes of inclusion and belonging. And then we approach it just like any other business strategy. We create a plan, a roadmap, and we execute towards that plan. So typically it's a long engagement because we like to say, Arquella, we like to say it's a marathon, not a sprint. And that's really with any level of change. The other thing that we think about is what are the areas within the organization, like your community relations, your, corporate social responsibility areas, even your technology areas, that when we're thinking about inclusion, that again, everybody becomes a part of what they can affect within their respective teams. And that could be different across the organization. And I also would say, depending on the size of the organization, it varies quite a bit as well. And so that same approach should be taken whether we're doing new operational processes, new technology. It's what's the impact to the organization, and how do we develop a strategy and a plan that we can actually execute on, and really affect the change, long-term sustainable change. So it's not a check the box.
Yeah, I love that holistic approach, Shante, like capturing all the pillars that we see across organizations. The other thing that you mentioned that I really liked was not just internally focused, but you talked about kind of the external side of things too, right? The community, corporate responsibility, and that those are all elements, a part of the change effort.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a project manager by trade, right? And so I've been doing project management for a long time. And when we think about stakeholders, which is one of the critical elements when you want to start embarking on a change, is who are your stakeholders internally and externally? Could be groups, could be individuals, could be teams.
Mm-hmm.
But then we like to say, do you want to enrage them or engage them? Right? Hopefully the latter.
Yeah.
So engage them, early and often, to again really listen to and understand how the change affects them, because sometimes we think we're making a small shift, and we're leaving them really in the wind because it impacts them. And so that's a really important element to think about is who are your stakeholders and how does it impact them.
Yeah, that's so great. Again, I love that. And you want to enrage them or engage them, right? So we definitely want to engage. And what we talk about too around when we think about the DEI and leaning into that lens is, again, it's everyone's responsibility. And so a lot of times we have leaders, to your point, Shante, talking about inclusion and belonging, is like, how can I show up and be an inclusive leader? What does that look like? How should I be, talking or communicating to my team members? And so what are some suggestions or strategies that you would provide to the audience around how do we help leaders move the needle as it relates to driving change, and what are the things that we can do or leaders can do to prepare themselves, right, to ensure that one, that they are equipped and they're ready, but then also how do they make sure that they get their teams ready for some of these changes?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it all starts with communication, right? And really being clear, like we talked about why the change is important, and being able to have that conversations with their teams. And this is a two-way dialogue, right? So that they get a chance to ask the questions that they need to ask in order to feel comfortable to embark on the change, and being able to articulate that. And so I also like to have leaders think about, in the ways of change, what can you influence and control, right? And not the things we cannot control, that, is gravity in some sense, right? But what are the things that we can influence and control, and then really be intentional about how we do that. The third thing I would say is just really setting the right expectations for your teams, and your leaders on your teams about, what the expectation is for the change. And I guess one more thing is, don't forget about the processes. Even when a change needs to happen, there's almost always an organizational process that has to be evaluated and or changed, and folks need to be trained on in order to fully adopt what the change is.
It's great. It's great. Deanna, anything that you want to add to that, what Shante has shared, or what might be something else that we want to share out or get strategies around, especially with all the changes that are going on within organizations and just within society that's impacting, right, our organizations for sure in this work that we do. So, Deanna, what might be something maybe that's coming up that maybe we can have Shante to answer for us?
So the last thing I just wanted to add to that, and Shante, you captured all the things that I think are critical in any kind of change effort. But my experience has been really around the leaders, and it all starts with the top, right? So modeling the way, modeling the way and the change that you want, right? And so that upward momentum from the ground up can be tough when you don't have leaders that are really leading that way. So
Yeah, I would, to that point, I think, again, and you think about leaders really set the tone, right? And so if you or myself or as a leader is not setting the tone for how we should embark on the change, we should lead the change, then that will leave a wake with the team, right? So to your point, leaders are role modeling the behavior. We like to call it the shadow of the leader. So whatever shadow you cast is what will show up for your team. So if you're positive, you're optimistic, you're leaning into the change, you're vulnerable, even when the areas that you don't understand, but you're trying to go get an understanding, those are the type of things that will show up and have your teams to react in a positive way.
Yeah, definitely. The leader is key in all of this, right? And that's in a lot of this work. We start with the leaders. We start with the leaders and it cascades down through the organization for sure. So yeah, this is great. Great information. So Shante, just to kind of pivot for just a moment, when you think about, again, just change happening within an organization, what are some, when we think about, you talked about DEI, but we think now companies are now like, oh, it's ESG, right? It's like, what does ESG mean? Environmental, social governance. Then also there's, could be other letters we can add to it. But when you think about, again, just what is some advice for leaders who are, again, navigating all the different changes, especially as it relates to DEIB, and now the focus being on ESG? What might be some strategies there when you think about continuing to drive the change that's still much needed, if you will?
Yeah, I think there's so my thoughts about diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is about culture, right? And so it is not a lot of what the politics say that it is. It's really about culture. It's about how do we show up every day, and we show value and respect to each other. And with that, what are those behaviors that we expect others to be, or to demonstrate within that organization? And because we're doing that, we are really enriching our culture. And DEI, and I guess the more technical term, typically ties into the S of social with ESG, environmental social governance, and it's because of that community element as well. And we just want to be responsible corporate citizens to the communities in which we operate and really serve those communities. And so that's how I've typically seen DEI, really latch on to the ESG strategies. But again, DEI is more than just that. It's really about shifting culture, to creating a space where everybody feels valued and respected, to be able to perform at their optimal level, right? And then that in turns really benefits the organization as well. So it's an important part of the culture, and organizations won't be able to really see or really reach the results or the goals that they want if they don't embrace it at some level.
Yeah, I really like that aspect of culture, Shantae, because I think you hit it, hit it at the root there. That's where the conversation should be.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious. Just I can't believe we're about to be in April of 2024. It's crazy how quickly the year is flying by. But I'm curious. Just are you seeing or what are you seeing as far as any trends or anything that's kind of picking up as far as momentum for 2024?
Mm-hmm. I think that I guess a couple of things. One is definitely organizations are seeing the benefit of it when you approach it and consider it as a part of the culture. And so again, it's how do we really create the space, the systems and processes, and equip the leaders, develop the leaders, and equip them to really create spaces of inclusion, and because the employee experience the leader, so it doesn't matter what's on our website and what message that we're putting out there. It is how does the employee experience their direct supervisor, manager, and so seeing companies really lean into the leadership development space, people leader space, so anybody that manages people. Also would say that I'm seeing companies really think about how do we integrate it into part of our normal culture. So for example, how do we evaluate our talent management practices for inclusion? And so those are some of the key areas. I also think that I'm almost afraid. I almost don't want to even go down this road, but some of the noise around dispelling or disbanding DI is when you think about the incoming generation and their expectations around a more inclusive work environment. If we want our incoming generation to come into these different industries, not just tech, but these other industries that are also very relevant to our society, then we're going to have to open our minds and our thinking about how we as an organization show up for them. And so it takes courage from the top for those leaders to say, what can I do? Again, that's in my influence and control to really create this space. And so it's my hope that all CEOs are thinking about this, but for the other C-suite leaders, they have an opportunity to use their voice to really affect the change that they want to see within their organization.
Yeah, that is so true. Again, definitely thinking about, and we say it probably daily, right? That there was 5 generations working anywhere from 18 to 80. And yes, they're going to the websites. They are requiring or requesting, right? Again, to ensure that they're working in a culture that's inclusive and that's equitable and that again, that they have opportunities. And so definitely it's not going anywhere, as we know that. But again, what are things that we can do or we can share with others to make sure that they are mindful of that and definitely making sure, again, that we're all being great corporate citizens, to your point,
Mhm.
for sure.
I'll add one more point too, is that the other thing that really has, for the clients that I work with, this really has helped is really thinking about it as a strategy versus a one-off item. So we think about inclusion as a strategy. We're looking at the enterprise and understanding where we have opportunities for us to address, and then we'll building out a plan to be able to execute in that. And many times that plan, or I would say 99.9% of that includes training, leadership development, and really, again, preparing those leaders. But I also do a lot around employee resource groups and helping them either establish them or support the development of their employee resource group leaders. And so you're just seeing, and I'm really grateful to be able to see the holistic approach for those that are still committed to the work.
Yeah, that's great. Again, it should be part of the DNA, right? It should be in everything that we're doing. And to your point, it's part of how we communicate. It's how we performance manage. It's how we recruit. It's embedded in the strategy in order to be successful for that organization to move forward, for sure. So those are great strategies and nuggets for us to think about. Shante, if you can share just again more about how people can reach out to you and just some of the great programming and things that you're doing on over on Leaders Edge side, that we definitely want to continue to be of support to you for sure.
Well, I definitely appreciate the time to be able to come and speak about our favorite topic here. So I'm on LinkedIn. That's probably about my main social outlet, and then I also have a website. So www.leadersedgeconsult.com, and there you can find all about our services around fractional DEI leadership, fractional project leadership, and training and coaching around project management services as well. So anything that's related to enterprise change is what we like to dip our toes into, and really like to partner with organizations there.
And then finally, please share more information about the work around that you're doing with ERGs within organizations as well, right?
Yes, yes.
Bring that up, right?
I
That's
forgot about
important
that, right?
to the conversation.
So we do a lot around with employee resource groups. One, if companies don't have them and they want to start them, we help them and partner with them to implement. I believe that ERGs are the heartbeat of the culture, right? Because they represent so many different groups. We also have what we call the ERG Leadership Exchange, which we help develop and coach our ERG leaders to be more effective in their roles. Because a lot of times they get these roles, they're passionate about it, but they don't really know how to do it and what tools and things that they need. So we provide them with all of that. And then quarterly, we get all of the ERG leaders. I was going to say across Houston, but we've had people from other parts of the U.S. join us now as a part of our ERG quarterly exchange.
That's exciting. That's exciting.
And I'll
So
add to
lots of
that.
great things happening.
I'll add to that,
Yeah,
Arquella.
definitely. So,
Quickly. I
oh
was
yeah, go
with
ahead.
I got the opportunity to attend one of these exchanges, and so there's a real need. You know, folks are asking some real questions, sometimes some tough questions, and so it was really great to see the collaboration, the attitude and disposition of leaning in to this topic across these organizations, across roles. So, really great experience.
And across industries.
Yes.
And across industries, absolutely.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Yeah, no, I recall. Yeah, we got a chance, or yeah, Alchemy got a chance to be a part of the inaugural kickoff, and so looking forward to continuing to support. And yeah, to your point, Deanna, it's so much needed, and so definitely looking forward to people and leaders and teams being able to access that resource for sure. So thank you, Shanta. Any closing words, right? And thank you for all that you're doing here in the community and beyond. But any closing words that you want to share with our audience before we close out our conversation today?
I think one of our favorite quotes, I would say this probably for all three of us, is that if you want to go fast, go alone. You want to go far, go together. And that's really what change is about. Like, how do we all join hands, lock elbows to be able to move organizations forward, and having the leaders having the courage to be able to step up and be able to lead that change and get their organizations ready for change.
Deanna, any closing words from you to our
Yeah.
audience?
No, this has been a great conversation and such an important one, and one that folks struggle with. So I'm really glad that we got the opportunity to chat on this. So thanks again for having me.
Yeah, no, this is great. This is great. Had fun, and definitely just a much needed conversation. We could talk all day about it, right? So thank you. So again, thank you everyone for tuning in and engaging with us on this journey towards how we want to enrich our organizational cultures and leadership. And remember, each conversation is a step towards transformation. So definitely, I want to encourage everyone to continue to lead and innovate and thrive until we connect again. Thank you all.
Thank you for tuning in to the Alchemy Consulting Group podcast. Follow this podcast on social media and help continue the conversation by sharing your business and leadership best practices. Subscribe to this podcast wherever you consume yours, and share this podcast with your organizations and networks. Let's strengthen the community of those committed to responsible leadership and work environments where everyone can thrive.